Hello my dear students, welcome back to my channel. In today's class, we will be starting with a new chapter and that is mechanical properties of solids. We will also call it elasticity or properties of matter. In the last segment, we discussed what is a rigid body, right? A rigid body is a body whose shape and size does not change whenever a force is applied on that body at that particular instant. So its shape and size does not change. Okay, in this chapter we'll be using a new term called a deforming force. What is a deforming force? A deforming force is a force which tries to deform the body. It is a force which tries to change the shape or size, means dimensions of a body. Okay, so whenever a deforming force is applied on a rigid body, it does not change its shape. But that was an ideal world. In actual world, no body can be perfectly rigid. Every time when you apply a deforming force on a body, the deforming force can be either you want to stretch it or you want to compress it. Okay, the stretching force will be called a tensile force and a compressing force will be called a compressive force. So whenever you exert either a tensile force or a compressive force, you will see that the shape of the body or the size of the body is changing somewhat, right? So no body can be perfectly rigid. Now again, what is this deforming force? So deforming force is an external force applied to a body which changes its shape or size. So deforming force is a force which you are applying on that body so that you can change its shape or size. Again, it can be tensile or compressive. So I'll write again, it can be tensile or compressive. Tensile means what? You are trying to stretch it. Compressive means what? You are trying to compress it. Okay. Now, this chapter deals about elasticity. What is this elasticity? It is the property of a material body. Again, I'll repeat, it is a property of a body by virtue of which it regains its original shape when the external deforming force is removed. So you are trying to deform a body and the body is actually getting deformed. No body is perfectly rigid. Okay, so the body is getting deformed, but as soon as you remove this deforming force, the body again regains its original shape. This property of a body, when it again regains its original shape, is called elasticity, but this definition is valid only up to what is called is elastic limit. Okay, after the body crosses its elastic limit, that means you have applied such a huge force that the body has crossed its elastic limit. In that case, what happens is it does not regain its original shape. So this is valid only up to elastic limit. Okay, so the property of a body by virtue of which it regains its original shape when the external force or external deforming force is removed is called elasticity. So here what you have to think about is how is this happening? How is the body regaining its shape? So you have to compare this with a spring. So if you remember, we have studied that if a spring is stretched or deformed, means if a spring is deformed, either it is stretched or compressed, it tries to regain its original shape. How? Because a restoring force is developed in the spring, right? So a restoring force is developed in the spring. In the same way, what happens is, see, it is explained in NCERT very beautifully. So you have to assume that the intermolecular forces between the two atoms, are just like springs. The intermolecular forces between the two atoms are just like springs. See, whenever you try to compress this, the spring force will again try to expand it, right? Or it will try to come back to the original position. Similarly, if you deform it from here, it will again try to come back to the original position. So that means you can treat these atoms just like springs, and you can assume that the atoms are in stable equilibrium. So atoms are in stable equilibrium at the given position where every atom is in such a separation from each other that they are in stable equilibrium. Okay, in fact, if you draw the graph between potential energy and the separation between them, so this is potential energy versus the separation between the atoms. separation between the atoms or molecules, suppose it is represented by R and U is the potential energy. This is the type of graph. Okay, this distance, this is the equilibrium separation, because here du by dr is 0. Du by dr is 0 means force is 0, because in work power energy we have studied that F is equal to minus du by dr, right? So if F is minus du by dr, so if slope is 0 of U versus R curve, you will say force is 0, and if force is 0, that means you will say in equilibrium. So at normal circumstances means that you are not applying any external force. So when you are not applying any external force, in that situation what will you say? That the atoms are in stable equilibrium. So suppose the stable equilibrium distances are not. Okay, but suppose now what is happening is, now you are deforming it. Suppose you are compressing it. So suppose you are compressing it from this side and this side. Okay, so you are compressing the object. If you are compressing the object, that means what is happening is the distance decreases, right? So the distance decreases, that means it becomes less than the equilibrium separation. If the distance becomes less than the equilibrium separation, in this case you are seeing that the slope is negative, right? If you remember, we have discussed in work power energy that if force is negative, that means the force is attractive force. Okay, and if force is positive, that means the force is repulsive force, right? So here, if du by dr is negative, that means F is positive. Why? Because this is negative, negative will become positive. So if the force is positive, that means there is a repulsive force here, right? So if there is a repulsive force here, that means if you try to decrease the distance, it will again try to increase itself. Why? Because there is a repulsive force. Okay, so that means a restoring force is getting created. Whenever you means increasing the separation or decreasing the separation, what you are seeing is that the system always tries to move towards the equilibrium position. That means the equilibrium of atoms is stable. Okay, so here, if the separation is increased, so if you are stretching it now, what you see? You will see that the slope becomes positive. If the slope becomes positive here, why the slope becomes positive? Why the slope becomes positive here? You can see that if R is increased at this point, this angle is acute angle, tan theta. Slope is what? Tan theta, right? Tangent of the slope. Okay, so slope is positive, that means du by dr is positive, that means force is negative, that means attractive force. So if you increase the separation from more than the equilibrium separation, in that case you will say that the force becomes attractive. Force becomes attractive means what? Two atoms, the force between two atoms becomes attractive means that the force between two atoms becomes attractive means that it is trying to compress. Okay, so that means whenever you increase the separation, it tries to decrease it. Whenever you decrease the separation, the force becomes repulsive and it tries to increase the separation. What it means is, every time the atoms try to come back to its equilibrium separation, right? So that means the atoms, the collection of atoms behaves like as if they were connected with springs. Okay, so now, what is a perfectly elastic body? A body is said to be perfectly elastic if it completely regains its original shape when the deforming force is removed. So what is happening is, perfectly elastic body means what? Whenever a body is deformed, right? You are deforming a body by applying some external force, and that force is called the deforming force. So you have deformed the body. Now you have removed the deforming force. Now once you have removed the deforming force, you are expecting that the body will completely regain its shape. If that is happening, in that case you will say that the body is perfectly elastic. That means in this case the restoring force that has developed is exactly equal to the deforming force. So I'll write it here. For a perfectly elastic body, the restoring force is equal to the deforming force. The restoring force is equal to the deforming force. Okay, so in a perfectly elastic body, the restoring force is equal to the deforming force. Okay, in the actual world, it's not possible. No body in this world can be perfectly elastic. Nobody can be perfectly rigid also. Nobody can be perfectly elastic also. So it will deform, but it will not regain its shape completely. Okay. A quartz fiber is the nearest approach to a perfectly elastic body. So a quartz fiber is the nearest approach. That means a quartz fiber can be treated to be perfectly elastic body. Okay, but in this chapter, whatever calculations that we will do, we will assume that the body is perfectly elastic. Only then we will perform the mathematical calculations that we will do in this chapter. Okay, then the next definition is perfectly plastic body. What is a perfectly plastic body? A body is said to be perfectly plastic if it does not regain its original form even slightly. That means the body, if you deform the body and you leave it and you means remove the deforming force, you will see that the body has not regained its shape at all. If the body does not regain its shape at all, that means what? That means it is a perfectly plastic body. Where you have left it, it was staying there only. So in that case, the body will become perfectly plastic. Okay, so since every material partially regain its original form on removal of the deforming force, so the concept of perfectly plastic body is also an ideal concept. Perfectly elastic is also an ideal concept. Perfectly rigid is also an ideal concept. Perfectly plastic is also an ideal concept. Okay, the closest thing to a perfectly plastic body is a paraffin wax, wet clay. Okay, so now what is plasticity? The property of a body by virtue of which it does not regain its original shape when the external force is removed is called plasticity. Again, I'll tell you, no body is perfectly elastic and no body is perfectly plastic. Okay. Now there will be one problem here with this definition of elasticity that we have defined. See, the property of a material by virtue of which it regains its original configuration when the external force is removed. Okay. Now think about which is more elastic, steel or rubber? Which is more elastic? Which is more elastic, steel or rubber? Think about it. Which is more elastic, steel or rubber? So from our observations, we know that rubber regains its original shape, right? Rubber regains its original shape, and what we have seen about steel is we are unable to, in normal circumstances, we are unable to stretch it, right? But actually, steel is more elastic than rubber. See, elasticity is decided, see, which is more elastic, or the elasticity or the elastic property is decided by elastic property is decided by the fact that which material can handle more deforming force, which material can handle more deforming force before it becomes plastic, before it becomes plastic. So you know that as the deforming force keeps on increasing, it's not necessary that the elasticity will retain. Elasticity keeps on decreasing as soon as you keep on increasing the deforming force. So at one particular deforming force, that is the elastic limit, it might happen that after this point, now the body no longer remain elastic and it converts to a plastic body. Okay, now rubber can experience a force, suppose 100 Newton, and after that it becomes plastic. But steel will be able to withstand 1000 Newton. Steel is much more elastic than rubber. So the general observation, when you see in day-to-day life, you think that rubber is more elastic, but actually steel is more elastic because it can handle more deforming force compared to rubber before turning into a plastic body. So here you will say that steel is much more elastic than rubber. Steel is much more elastic than rubber. Okay, in this chapter we will actually define some terms with using that term, which we will call modulus of elasticity, we will exactly know which term or which substance is more elastic. More the modulus of elasticity, more is the elastic property. So that we will define in this class. Okay. Now let us define some important terms that will be useful in this chapter. The first important term is stress. What is stress? Stress is defined as the restoring force per unit area. So the unit of stress is Newton per meter square, which is same as unit of pressure. But they are not the same physical quantities, but there is some difference between stress and pressure that we will discuss. Now, in this chapter, we will be studying only about the perfectly elastic bodies where restoring force is equal to deforming force. Again, I will repeat, stress is defined as restoring force per unit area and not the deforming force per unit area. The difference between the deforming force and the restoring force is that restoring force is a reacting force. That means whenever you apply the deforming force, the body is giving a counter restoring force so that it can go back to the original stable equilibrium position, right? It's like, suppose to two students, I'm asking them to study, right? So if I'm asking them to study, one of them is taking the stress and he's reacting and he's saying, yes, I will do it. But the second is not taking any stress and he's not paying any heed to whatever I am saying. So the second student is not taking any stress, right? So the second student is not taking any stress. That means he's not reacting to the external force. But the first student is reacting to the external force. That is why he is taking the stress. So stress is the restoring force per unit area. You have to take the stress. That means you have to react to the deforming force. When you react to the deforming force, only then stress can be developed. Second student is not taking any stress. The first student is taking the stress. To both the students, I have given the force. But one of them has reacted to that force and he is taking the stress. The other has not reacted to the force. That means he has not taken the stress. So stress will be produced only if you start to react, if the body starts to react, if it produces the restoring force. Okay. Yes. For elastic bodies, we will say that the restoring force is equal to the deforming force. So you will write the stress as deforming force per unit area, but the actual definition of stress has to be restoring force per unit area. The body has to react to the deforming force, only then you can say that stress is produced. Now, stress can be compressive as well as tensile. That means due to stress, a body can be either compressed or stretched. Tensile means stretch, compressive means compress. Okay, so force due to the stress can either compress the body or it can stretch the body. Okay, now stress can be of two types. The first type is the normal stress and the second type is called the shearing stress. So what is normal stress? See, suppose you have a body and there is a force exerted on the body in this direction and the face which is experiencing this force has an area A. This force is a compressive force because it is trying to compress this body, right? So the normal stress is force upon normal area, means area which is perpendicular to the force. Okay, so normal stress is F perpendicular divided by A. That means you have to take the component of force. Here this force is already perpendicular to the area. But if it is not perpendicular to the area, in that case you'll have to take the component of force which is perpendicular to the area. Then you will get the normal stress. So normal stress is F perpendicular by A, where F perpendicular is the force component which is perpendicular to the area. Now, this force can be tensile also. That means it is trying to stretch the body. So the force can be compressive or the force can be tensile. Okay. If the force is compressive, it will be a compressive normal stress. If the force is tensile, it will be means if the force is trying to stretch the body, then it will be a tensile normal stress. Okay. Then there is one more stress called shearing stress. Okay. Now, suppose the force acting on the body is along a surface. Suppose this is the surface and this force is acting along the surface. If the force is acting along the surface, in that case you will say that there is a shearing force or the tangential force. Shearing force or shearing stress is the tangential stress. That means when the force is along the surface, in that case the stress developed due to that force is called the shearing stress. So again, shearing stress is force upon area. but this is the tangential force, and you need the tangential area, or you need the area which is along the force. That means this area. Okay, for example, in this question, see, suppose you have a body and in which a force F is acting. Okay, and you are taking two components of this force. One is the perpendicular component. That means this, you are resolving this force into two components. One is the perpendicular to the surface, which is having an area of A, and the other force is along the surface A. Now, due to this perpendicular force, normal stress will be generated, and due to this parallel force, or F parallel, or you can say tangential force, shearing stress will be generated on the same surface. So the same surface has a normal stress which is equal to F perpendicular by A, and it also has a shearing stress which is equal to F parallel by A. Okay, now coming back to normal stress can be one dimensional, but it can also be three dimensional. Now this diagram that we have drawn here, it is a one dimensional normal stress. Okay, or it is also called the linear normal stress. Okay, or it is also called the longitudinal normal stress. But if there is a three-dimensional stress, then what will happen is, suppose you have a body and it is a three-dimensional body, and the force is exerted on this body from all dimensions, from all directions. Okay, so if the force is exerted on the body from all directions and this force is perpendicular to the surface, then the force that is exerted, the net force that is exerted upon the area of the surface, is the normal stress on the body. Okay, so volumetric normal stress is also called bulk stress. So there are two types of normal stress. One is one dimensional stress, and that is also called linear normal stress, or sometimes it is also called linear stress, or sometimes it is also called longitudinal stress. Then there is a three-dimensional stress, where again the force is normal to the surface, but it is three-dimensional. In that case, you will say it is the bulk stress. Now coming to a very important thing, and that is, what is the difference between pressure and stress? Because both of them have same units, right? Then why are we not referring to this stress as pressure? Why are we treating them as different physical quantities when they have the same units? So there are some minute differences between the definitions of pressure and stress that we will discuss now. See, the first thing is, force due to pressure is always compressive. See, if they tell you that there is a pressure here and you apply a force due to that pressure on a particular body, then you will say that the force due to that pressure is always compressive. So suppose this is a body and you will say the pressure is suppose P. Then the force due to this pressure on this body will be equal to PA, and it will be in this direction because it has to compress the body. Similarly, if the pressure here is suppose P dash, from here then the force will be P dash into A, and again it will be compressive. That means the force due to pressure is always compressing the body. Okay, but the force due to stress can be compressive as well as tensile. So stress does not have any compulsion that it has to be compressive. It can be compressive as well as tensile. Okay, the next thing is, the force due to pressure is always perpendicular to the surface. That means the force due to pressure will always be perpendicular to the surface. Okay, stress can be normal as well as shearing. Pressure cannot be shearing. Pressure is always perpendicular to the surface, or force due to pressure is always compressive as well as normal. You know that shearing stress, in the shearing stress, the force is along the surface, but for that force there is no pressure. Pressure is always, force due to pressure is always perpendicular to the surface. So if you have to write the pressure, you have to take the component of force which is perpendicular to the surface. So I'll write pressure is F perpendicular by A. Okay, you need only the perpendicular component of the force, and that too, that pressure has to be, that force has to be compressive. Now, force due to pressure is always three-dimensional. Force due to pressure is from all dimensions, means all sides force will be acting. You cannot say only force will be acting from this side or this side. Force will be acting in a three-dimensional way. But in a stress, we have seen that stress can be one-dimensional also. So if a rod is being pulled, then this is stress. Okay, the pulling force will apply stress, but it will not apply pressure. The pressure is always three-dimensional, but stress can be one-dimensional also. Okay, so in other words, now what we will say, compressive bulk stress. Compressive bulk stress, because bulk stress means what? Three-dimensional stress, right? And bulk stress is also a normal stress, right? And compressive. So pressure has to be compressive. So the only one type of stress can be called pressure, and that is the compressive bulk stress. Why? Because force due to pressure has to be compressive, force due to pressure has to be volumetric, and force due to pressure has to be normal. So compressive bulk stress is compressive, it is three-dimensional, and it is normal. Okay, so compressive bulk stress is pressure. Other types of stresses are there, but pressure is always the compressive bulk stress. Okay, then pressure is a scalar quantity, but stress, you will say, it is neither a vector nor a scalar quantity. Why? Pressure does not have any direction. Okay, in fact, for pressure, you know that the force has to be perpendicular to the surface. But for stress, you don't know. If I say stress, I don't know whether it is shearing stress or normal stress. So for stress, you have to specify the type of stress. That is why we cannot say it is exactly scalar. It depends on the direction of force. Okay, but yes, value or stress itself does not have any direction, but its value depend on the direction of force, right? So that is why you will say that it is neither a vector quantity nor a scalar quantity, it is a tensor quantity. Okay, so these are the major differences between pressure and stress. So only one type of stress is called pressure, and that is the compressive bulk stress. Okay, and in questions normally they ask anything about bulk stress, then they will ask you questions related to pressure only. That means they will ask you questions related to compressive bulk stress only. Okay, they will relate it with pressure. Now find out the longitudinal stress and tangential stress on a fixed block. So this is a fixed block, and they are asking you, longitudinal stress means the linear stress, linear normal stress, and the tangential stress means the shearing stress. Okay, so from here we can clearly see that this is 100 cos 30, right? 100 cos 30 is the shearing. So tangential stress is 100 cos 30 divided by area. Now what is the area? 5 into 2, right? And the normal force here is this. So there is this normal force is outward. That means this is tensile stress. Okay, so you will say 100 sine 30 divided by 10, and this is a tensile stress. So I'll write it, this is a tensile stress. Now the next question is, find out the bulk stress on the spherical object of radius 10 by pi centimeter. So this is a spherical object of radius 10 by pi centimeter if area and mass of the piston. So this is the mass of the piston, which is 50 kg, and area of this piston is also given to you. The area of the piston is 50 centimeter square, and this can be written as 50 into 10 raised to the power minus 4 meter square. Okay, so we need to find the bulk stress on this spherical object due to this gas. Okay, now you know that bulk stress or bulk compressive stress is the pressure. Now if the pressure outside is atmospheric, so I'll write pressure outside is PA, then the pressure inside will be PA plus mg by A. Why the pressure will be PA plus mg by A? Because inside this piston there will be gas which has a pressure due to the atmosphere as well as due to this piston, right? The piston is exerting the gravitational force, and due to that gravitational force there is a pressure which is equal to mg divided by the area of the piston. Okay, so this is the pressure, but this is also the bulk stress. Bulk stress is equal to pressure, so you will get this is PA plus mg by A. Now m is 50 kg, so 50 into 10 divided by A is 50 into 10 raised to the power minus 4, so that will be equal to 1 into 10 raised to the power 5, plus the atmospheric pressure is also 1 into 10 raised to the power 5. So we will say that the pressure of the gas is 2 into 10 raised to the power 5 Newton per meter square. Now in this question it is given what will be the shape of a column so that the stress at each level of the column are same due to the weight and the applied stress. So what they are asking is, how should the area vary so that the stress at every point due to the weight is same. Okay, the density of the material is given as rho. So suppose this is any random shape, okay, which we are getting when the stress is same at all the points. Okay, so here the area at this point is given as A. Okay, this is given to you, and the stress is a constant, and that stress is equal to sigma, right? Now because the stress is same at every point, so for equilibrium, now See, what we will do here is at a distance x, we will take an element of width dx, right? If the area here is A, if the area here is A, then we will say that the area here is A plus. Okay. So from here, if the force is, you know that force due to pressure is always compressive, right? So we will write here the force is sigma, the stress is the pressure here multiplied by area, and it is compressive and normal to the surface. And from here, the force will be sigma into A plus D, and again it will be normal and compressive. So from here, see, the net force will be sigma A plus dA. This is just the element, okay? So the net force will be from here sigma A, from here sigma A plus dA, and the net upward force from this two due to pressure. There will be a net upward force. So net upward force due to pressure, net upward force due to pressure will be equal to sigma into A plus dA minus sigma A, that is sigma into dA, right? But this has to be balanced by the gravitational force for equilibrium. Now, what is the gravitational force? The density is given to you. So I'll write density multiplied by area of this is A, this area is A, okay? And we are assuming that this thickness is so small that this has a constant area, although you know that the area and here are different, right? But the thickness is so small that we will assume that the area is A, okay? So rho into area into dx into g. So from this we will get dA upon A is equal to rho g by sigma into dx. Now at x equal to 0, the area is given as small. The area is given as small a. And at x equal to any x, we need to find the area. We need to find the area as a function of x, right? How should area vary at every point so that the stress remains same? That is why we have taken the stress to be constant. See, sigma, sigma. Okay. So you will say from here, ln capital A by small a. When you differentiate this, you know that you will get ln x, right? And when you put the limits, you will get ln A by capital A. Okay. So from this, you will get rho g by sigma integration dx is x. So from this we will get capital A is equal to small a e power rho g x by sigma. So this is what? This is the area as a function of x that should be maintained so that the stress at every point due to its own weight remains same. Now, the next definition that we have to do is strain. What is strain? So strain is defined as the change in dimension upon original dimension. So the strain is defined as the change in dimension upon original dimension. Strain is a unitless quantity because it is change in dimension upon original dimension. It is a ratio. It is a unitless quantity. Okay. Strain be of three types, just like stress. In stress, what we discussed, one is longitudinal stress or longitudinal linear stress. The other is the bulk stress, that is the bulk normal stress, and then there is the shearing stress. Okay, so stress was basically of two types. One was normal stress and one was shearing stress. But normal stress again was of two types, that is the longitudinal stress and the bulk stress. Okay, strain is of three types, and that is linear strain or longitudinal strain, volumetric strain, and shearing strain. Now first thing that we will discuss is what is linear strain. So linear strain is the strain developed means along the rod. So if there is a rod and you are stretching it, then the strain developed in it along the rod, okay, is called the longitudinal strain. Okay, so longitudinal strain is defined as delta L by L. Then there is the next term which is called the volumetric strain. So volumetric strain is what? The change in volume upon the original volume. Okay, so volumetric strain is three-dimensional, right? Now suppose there is a body, and this body, listen carefully, because I have already told you that mostly whenever they will talk about bulk stress, it will be bulk compressive stress. If it is a compressive stress, then you can also refer it to as pressure. So You know that the force due to pressure is always compressive, right? So if the force is compressive, then the volume will decrease always. Volume due to pressure will always decrease. Okay, so if volume is decreasing, in that case delta V will be negative. So delta V by V is negative. If delta V by V is negative, that is why to make the system means strain positive, because strain is defined as a positive quantity. So if volumetric strain is a positive quantity and this is a negative quantity, so you have to use a minus. I'm using a minus here because in general, whenever they ask about compressive stress, means whenever they talk about bulk stress, they are talking about the compressive bulk stress, that is the pressure only. Okay, so that is why I've given a minus here, because force due to pressure is always compressive, and compressive force means what? The volume has to decrease. Then the next type of strain is shearing strain. Now what is shearing strain? See, in linear strain or the longitudinal strain and the volumetric strain, what was happening is the volume or the dimension was changing, length was changing, volume was changing. Here in shearing strain, the shape of the body will be changing. So suppose you are applying a force on this surface and this side, the bottom side is fixed. If the bottom side is fixed, in that case, whenever you apply a force here, what will happen is this rod, means this body will bend. This body is bent, but means the upper end is bent because of the shearing stress, but the lower end is still fixed to the ground. So in that case, the angle that it bends, theta, is called the shearing strain. And you know that the bending will not be very large, right? Bending बहुत ही छोटा होता है, where bending will be very small. So if bending is very small, in that case you will say that tan theta is nearly equal to theta. You know that for small trigonometric angles, sin theta can be nearly equal to tan theta, and that can be nearly equal to x by L. This is also nearly equal to theta. Theta is the shearing strain, and I will write theta is equal to x by L, or tan theta is equal to x by L, but theta is also x by L because theta is very small. So this theta, this angle is the shearing strain. So shearing strain is measured in terms of angle. Angle is also a unitless quantity. Okay. Now the next thing is lateral strain. Now what is lateral strain? So whenever a body is stretched, its length is increasing, but its area of cross section is also changing. So if its area of cross section is changing, then the change in radius upon the original radius is called the lateral strain. For the change in diameter or upon the original diameter is called the lateral strain. So lateral strain is defined as minus delta r by r, or minus delta d by d, where d is the diameter or r is the radius. So here what I've written a minus here because whenever the length will increase, there is a tendency that the radius should decrease, because most substances wants to keep its volume constant. So if you stretch the wire, the length is increasing but the radius is decreasing. Now again, the lateral strain is a positive quantity. So if the strain is a positive quantity, in that case delta r is a negative quantity, because if delta L is positive, delta r is negative, right? So if delta r is negative, in that case if you use a minus here, then minus and minus will become positive because strain is a positive. Okay, now there is one important mathematical expression that we will be needing in this chapter, and that is very simple, and we have already discussed this before, that suppose there is a function like z is equal to x power a y power b, and you are changing this function, this value of x, by a small amount, cx, and you are changing this value of y by a small amount, suppose delta y. In that case, the small change in z, because if you are changing x by a small amount and you are changing y by a small amount, then there will be a small change in z. Now the small change in z upon the original value of z will be equal to a delta x by x, that is a small change in x divided by the original value of x multiplied by the power of x, and plus b multiplied by the change in value of y divided by the original value of y, the small change in value of y. This is a very simple thing that you can get by taking log both sides first and then differentiate, and then replacing dz with delta z. That's it. Okay. So for a small change in x and y, this is very important relation that we will be using in this chapter and even subsequent chapter. Okay. Now you know that the area of this cross section is proportional to r square. So if area, this can be proportionality also. This constant will not be of any use, because when you take the ratio, the constants will cancel out. So you know that the area of cross section here will be proportional to r square. So delta A by A from this relation, because here there is only one variable, so this is not there. If this is not there, in that means z is proportional to x power a, means delta z by z is a delta x by x, right? Because this term is 0. So here also, if a is proportional to r square, you will say that delta A by A is equal to 2 delta r by r. Sometimes they ask you what is the change in area upon original area. In that case, you will say it is 2 delta r by r. Okay. Now we will discuss a very important definition, and that is Poisson's ratio. What is Poisson's ratio? So Poisson was a scientist, and he found out that for every body, the ratio of lateral strain to longitudinal strain is always same. Ratio of lateral strain to longitudinal strain is always same, and he named it Poisson's ratio. So lateral strain is what? Delta R by R. Longitudinal strain is delta L by L. Obviously, lateral strain is minus delta R by R because it cannot be negative. Okay. So from here you will see that the lateral strain is equal to minus sigma. Sigma is the Poisson's ratio multiplied by the longitudinal strain. So lateral strain is equal to minus sigma into longitudinal strain, and the sigma is a constant for a given substance. Okay. So it is independent of the shape, size of the object, or it is also independent of the stress given to the object or the strain produced. Now, one particular important case here is if the volume of the rod is constant. So even if you stretch it, the volume remains constant. So if the volume of the rod remains constant, you know that volume is pi r square L of a cylindrical rod, right? Now, proportionality is r square L because pi is a constant. So volume is proportional to r square L. So we can write delta V by V is equal to 2 delta R by R plus delta L by L. How am I writing this? From this relation that I have already taught you. Y is proportional to x power A, suppose z power B, then you will write delta Y by Y is equal to A delta X by X plus B delta Z by Z. Right? So here also, here x power A is 2 and power B is 1. Okay. So you will write delta V by V is equal to 2 delta R by R plus delta L by L. Now, it is given that the volume is constant. That means there is no change in volume. So you will say delta V is equal to 0. Now, if delta V is equal to 0, then you will say 2 delta R by R is equal to minus delta L. But you know that delta R by R is minus sigma delta L by L. So I put the values of delta R by R as minus sigma delta L by L. From this, minus minus getting cancelled out, delta L getting cancelled out, and finally you will get sigma, or the Poisson's ratio is equal to 0.5. The maximum value of this Poisson's ratio, sigma, is maximum value is 0.5. Okay. The value of Poisson's ratio for any substance belongs to minus 1 to 0.5. Okay. But for most substance it is positive only, and it becomes equal to 0.0 to 0.5. Okay. Now, the relation between stress and strain, or you can say what is the Hooke's law. Now, up to the limit of elasticity, stress is directly proportional to strain. This is up to the limit of elasticity, stress is directly proportional to strain, and this is Hooke's law. The proportionality constant is represented with E, and that is called the modulus of elasticity. So stress is equal to the modulus of elasticity multiplied by strain. Stress is equal to the modulus of elasticity multiplied by strain. More the modulus of elasticity, more is the elastic property of. So steel is more elastic than rubber, that we have discussed. That means steel has more modulus of elasticity compared to rubber. Okay. So now we have discussed 3 types of stress and 3 types of strain. All the 3 types of stress are related with the 3 types of strain according to stress is equal to modulus into strain only. So the first thing that we will discuss is linear longitudinal stress. So linear longitudinal stress is equal to Young's modulus. So the first type of modulus is Young's modulus. This modulus of elasticity is also of 3 types. One is Young's modulus, the other is bulk modulus, and the other is the modulus of rigidity or the shearing modulus. We will discuss all the three in details now. So linear stress, the first type of stress is the longitudinal linear stress, and the first type of strain is the longitudinal strain, and both of them are related as linear stress or the linear longitudinal stress is equal to Young's modulus, which we represented as Y. In some books it is also represented as E also. So you can say linear longitudinal stress is equal to Young's modulus multiplied by the longitudinal strain. Now if this is the body and you are applying a force, okay, so that the dimension is changing linearly, you will say that F by A is equal to Y delta L by L. Okay, so this is the longitudinal linear stress, this is the longitudinal strain, and this is the Young's modulus. So sometimes they will ask you what is the elongation in a rod due to a force. So delta L is the elongation in the rod. So you will write delta L is equal to FL by AY. So elongation in the rod delta L will be equal to FL by AY. Then the next type of stress that we discussed was volumetric stress or bulk stress. Now bulk stress, we also called it as pressure because bulk compressive stress is pressure, and we mostly discuss bulk stress in terms of pressure only. Okay, so bulk compressive stress, that is the pressure, is equal to minus B. Now Young's modulus was Y. This time the proportionality constant is called bulk modulus. Okay, so the excess pressure is the stress, right? This is bulk stress. Bulk stress is equal to bulk modulus into the volumetric strain. Okay, and this is also called bulk strain or the volumetric strain. Okay, so this is again related as stress is equal to modulus into strain. Stress is equal to modulus into strain. Now we have written a minus here because again I repeat, this term is a positive quantity. This excess pressure here is a positive quantity, but this term delta V is a negative quantity. Now if delta V is a negative quantity, then to make this positive, because if left hand side is positive, the right hand side has to be positive, so I have introduced a minus sign. This minus is very important. Sometimes the bulk modulus is also represented as a Greek letter kappa, okay, similar to K, very similar to K. Okay, so that means, so suppose this is a body and there is an excess pressure here which is trying to compress this, then this excess pressure, okay, is equal to minus B delta V by. Okay, we'll do problems related to bulk modulus a bit later or in the next class, but in this class we are just defining what is the relation between bulk stress and bulk strain. What is bulk strain? Bulk strain is the volumetric strain. Okay, then there is the last type of stress, that is the shearing or the tangential stress and the shearing or the tangential strain. So shearing stress and shearing strain are related to each other by again Hooke's law, but this time the proportionality constant or the modulus of elasticity is called the modulus of rigidity or the shearing modulus. Okay, so you will say that suppose this is a body and you have applied a force on the surface and this body is bending, okay, and it has bent by an angle theta, then shearing strain is theta, right, and shearing stress is F by A. We will write F by A is equal to shearing modulus into theta, and shearing modulus or the modulus of rigidity is represented by a term called eta. Okay, modulus of rigidity is represented by a term called eta. Okay, so we have related different types of stress with different types of strain. Now the next thing that we will discuss is what is the properties or what are the important points about the modulus of elasticity. The first very important point about modulus of elasticity is that it is independent of stress or strain. It depends only on the type of material. If the substance is fixed, you will say that the modulus of elasticity is fixed. Yes, it might vary slightly with temperature, because when the temperature increases, the intermolecular separation between them increases. Okay, so there is some changes in the potential energy curve. For most substances, you will say that as the temperature increases, the modulus of elasticity decreases. Whether it's the Young's modulus or the bulk modulus, with temperature, the modulus of elasticity decreases. Okay. Now, the second thing is the dimension of elasticity or the modulus of elasticity is same as stress. Why? Because you know that stress is equal to Y strain or stress is equal to modulus into strain. If stress is modulus into strain, in that case strain is a dimensionless quantity. So whatever is the dimension of stress is same as the dimension of modulus. Okay, so that is why we have written the dimensions are same as stress. The third very important thing is, greater the value of the modulus of elasticity, more elastic is the material. So greater the value of the modulus of elasticity, more elastic is the material. So steel is more elastic than rubber, that means steel has a more value of the modulus of elasticity, right? See, you know that stress is equal to E strain. So for a given amount of stress, I fix this. If I fix this, I fix the product of this and this, right? So if the product of this and this is fixed, more the E, less the strain. More the E, less the strain, right? So that means if a substance has more modulus of elasticity, that means it will handle more stress, but it will produce only a small strain, right? So steel is more elastic because it can handle more stress, but still produce only a small strain. Okay, so more elastic means more modulus of elasticity. More modulus of elasticity means for a given stress there is less strain. Okay, again for a given strain, suppose strain is given, then if this is more, then stress has to be more. So for a given strain, if the modulus of elasticity is more, that means more stress is required for that given strain. So if the strain is fixed for you, so you want that much strain, then the body which has more means modulus of elasticity, you will have to give more stress to that body so that you can get same strain. Okay, then mostly the Young's modulus and the modulus of rigidity are defined only for solids. Why? Because liquid or gas or fluids cannot handle shearing stress, because whenever there is a shearing stress or force along the surface of a liquid or gas, it begins to flow. We don't want it to flow, okay, because it is fixed from the bottom. So that is possible mostly only for a solid. Okay, for viscous liquid it is possible, that we will discuss in a new chapter, that is viscosity. And Young's modulus is defined for one dimensional stress, but liquids and gas cannot stretch only from one dimension. Okay, it will stretch in three dimensional way. So you can only define bulk modulus for liquids and gases. Okay, so if you are defining Young's modulus for liquids and gases also, then you will say that Young's modulus of solid is greater than liquid and greater than gas. But this is true for all the types of modulus. But bulk modulus is also greater for solid than for liquid than for gas. Why? Because you know that more the modulus, less is the strain produced for a given stress. You know that solid is not easily stretchable or compressible, right? Liquids and gas can be easily stretched or compressed, but solids cannot be easily stretchable or compressible. That means what? That means solids have more modulus of elasticity, because for a given stress it will produce less strain. That is possible only if it has more modulus of elasticity. From here, see, for a given stress, if E is more, strain is less. So you know that solid produces less strain for a given stress. That is why solids has more elasticity. Okay, then there is one term called compressibility. Bulk modulus is 1 by compressibility. More the bulk modulus, less is the compression that you can do. But more is the compressibility, more is the compression that you can do. They are oppositely related. Bulk modulus is 1 by K or 1 by compressibility, or you can say compressibility is 1 by bulk modulus. So if compressibility is more, that means it is easier to compress. But if bulk modulus is more, that means it is difficult to compress. As the temperature increases, the distance between atoms increases. We know that. So the restoring force decreases. So mostly when the temperature is increased, the restoring force decreases. Okay, if the restoring force decreases, you will say stress decreases. The stress decreases, you will say Young's modulus decreases. Now, variation of stress with strain, or you can say stress strain relationship. Now, up to the limit of elasticity, we know that stress is directly proportional to strain. This is Hooke's law, right? So stress is directly proportional to strain. That means stress versus strain graph will be a straight line. So from O to A, this is the point up to which you will say Hooke's law is valid. Okay, or you can say this is the proportionality limit when stress is directly proportional to strain. Okay, so when a wire is stretched by a load, so there is a wire and it is stretched by a load. then it is seen that for a small value of load, the extension produced in the wire is proportional to the load. More the load, more the extension, right? It is directly proportional. Now, on removing the load, this wire returns to the original length. So when the deforming force is removed, the wire is returning to its original length. Okay, so that means it is showing the elastic property. When it was deforming force was there, it is stretching, but as soon as the deforming force is removed, it again comes back to the original length. So the wire regains its original dimensions only when the load applied is less than or equal to a certain limit. After that limit, what happens is now it cannot regain its shape completely. This limit is called elastic limit. Thus, the elastic limit is the maximum stress on whose removal the bodies regain their original dimension. Okay, and in this figure, it is represented by the point A. Now, when we increase the stress further, a point B is reached, this point B, where the stress is not directly proportional to strain, but you can still say that there is elastic nature. That means it will try to regain its shape, although if it is not regaining its complete shape, but it will try to regain its shape. This is the elastic limit or the yield point. Up to this point, you will say that the body remains elastic. Okay. So on reaching the point B, if we remove the stress, the wire does not come to the original dimension, but it will try to regain its shape, but it will not regain its shape completely. But as we go beyond B, even a small change in stress, see, there is a small change in stress, but it is producing a large strain. As we go beyond B, then even for a small increase in stress, the strain produced is very large. This type of behavior is observed at around point C. And at this stage, the wire starts beginning to flow. That means it's behaving like a viscous liquid. So beyond point C, that is beyond the yield point, the plastic nature starts. That means the body will now not regain its shape at all. Okay, so if you have reached the plastic region, then it will start flowing like a viscous liquid. Okay, so when you reach the plastic region, that means you've given enough stress to reach the plastic region. In that case, there will be a large increase in strain or a small increase in stress. So that means it starts to behave like a viscous liquid, it starts to flow. Okay, but then again, if you keep increasing the stress, at one point you will reach a maximum stress, that is called the tensile strength of the material. So tensile strength of the material is the maximum stress or the ultimate stress. You cannot generate a stress more than this. Why? Because at this point, even if you increase the deforming force, it will not react to it. I have told you, the second student, it will not react further. So after this point, even if you increase the deforming force, it will now not react. In fact, after this force, if you keep on increasing the deforming force, in fact, now the stress will decrease. Its restoring force will decrease. After this point, the restoring force will again start to decrease. And at one point, it will reach a breaking point or fracture point. What is this breaking point? So this is the stress beyond the ultimate stress. This is the stress beyond the ultimate stress, and it is less than the ultimate stress, and this is the stress at which the substance or this material breaks. Okay, now you cannot further stretch it, it will break. It is the fracture point. Now there are two types of substances, that is the brittle substances and ductile substances. Now brittle substances have very low plastic region, it cannot be stretched to a large extent. As soon as you try to stretch it, it will break. These substances are called brittle substances whose plastic nature is very small. So it directly reaches the fracture point very soon. Okay, but then there are ductile substances which has a large plastic region. It can be stretched to a very large extent. Okay, so in this chapter we will be dealing with questions only related to the elastic limit, that is up to point A. Beyond that, we will only discuss it theoretically, right? So in the next class, we will proceed with some questions. Till then, stay tuned with me. Bye bye. Take care. Hello students. If you like my work, do hit the like button and share my work with your friends. Also, Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. You'll be notified when I upload my next video.